Whoever that sneezed, bless you. Questions?
Master Guruji. This is a question from Joatima in Denmark. It's in 3 parts. Number 1, what is the truth about intercession for somebody? And how does one perform this, bearing in mind that God's will always is done?
Mm-hmm.
The second part, as God is love, and love is truth, love must contain wisdom. Is wisdom automatically gained when true love is reached? What is intelligence? And what is the difference between wisdom and knowledge?
Mm-hmm.
And the third part, as the universe, as everything else, is a living organism, what part does then the black hole discovered in the universe play, and what is behind them?
Beautiful.
That's it.
Give me that. We will write a book tonight. What is the truth about intercession for somebody, and how do one perform this, bearing in mind that God's will always is done? Good. Intercession is necessary, and this we have found in the lives of the great masters like Jesus, Buddha, and Krishna. Now, we say God's will is always done, but how many of us can really appreciate or know God's will? Now, an interceder is not one that goes and appeal on your behalf. The true meaning of that would be that he, having found the knowledge of divinity, conveys that knowledge to you, so therefore he that knows God's will interprets that will to you. But your approach to him is always direct. Good. There are certain theologies in the world, certain religions that would say that, for example, in the Gita, no one goes to the Father except through me. And Jesus says the same thing. What does that really mean? It means that he's not there going to, as an advocate or a barrister, appeal for you to divinity. No. It means that you have to reach the stage of Christhood. You first have to become one with that is a very high mortal being, an embodied being. You have to reach that stage of consciousness before you can reach the stage of divine consciousness. Now that is the greatest duty that has been performed by all true teachers of divinity. And they lead you, and they have to be authoritative. You come to me. There is nothing wishy-washy about a great soul, the great being, he that has become one with God. He tells you with authority because he has experienced that. So when he says no one goes to the Father except through me is very true. There have been many interpretations, and I can only give you mine, that you have to reach the consciousness of Christ in order to reach divinity. So, we could call him the middleman. The middleman. In daily life, if you go from the street direct to a wholesaler, he won't sell you his wares, his goods. He'll tell you, no, we supply the retailer and you buy my goods through the retailer. So, this has happened all along the ages. Now, when we talk of God's will, is that not also His will to bring into being such an entity? It is His will. And then what God are we talking about? Who knows God? How many have experienced God? It is said that out of 10 million people on the path towards divinity, perhaps 10 might reach. You see, I always say that I don't want to show you God, because that's a false promise. But I would say, let me put you on the path towards divinity, and you walk with your own feet. And if you're put on the path of the right direction, you will definitely reach there. We have some religions that would say that, okay, you come to me, right, and pay your dues, and I will take you to God. Please shun them. For the true messenger of God, or the true incarnation that represents in physical form that which is divine, is worth going to. You can call him the middleman, the interceder, or whatever title. But when a man has become one with God, then truly he could be the greatest representative or God incarnate walking on earth. So, these theories or theologies are not wrong. They're all true. They have a deep meaning. But all people, most people, 99.9% of the people misinterpret these things. It is not to him but through him that you realize your own personal divinity. For you come from nowhere and you're going nowhere. If that which we call divinity is omnipresent and all-existent, eternally so and infinite, then you are that too. For the eternity of that which is divine can never exist without you being eternal. And we keep on saying, I get born and I die. What gets born? What decays? And what dies? This little bubble, this little physical body, how important is it? In the eternity of things. When we talk of eternity, is time measureless, which means in turn timeless, while man is bound by time, because his emphasis is on the little body, the little mind, which is here today and not there tomorrow. And not there tomorrow meaning he is not here as well. For where is the difference between here and there? What is here and what is there? We only say here and there because we know only of time and space. Now time and space and the causation of it are in reality, from the absolute viewpoint, non-existent. So, if I would say, you are non-existent, it would seem blasphemy. It would seem, you say, look, I can feel and touch myself and can feel pain and pleasure, and I can walk and I can communicate. But who is saying that? The unreal you, which is transitory, and anything transitory could be termed non-existent. But is the real self that is you saying that? No, for the real self is beyond time, beyond space, and nothing causes it, and that is why it is eternal. When we talk of God's will, what will are we talking about? Because the supreme divine, the supreme divinity has no will. The supreme divinity has no will. But the divinity man is talking about is the force which makes up the whole universe, or in other words, the personal God. I was speaking to that person this afternoon in an interview. That we call the personal God. Now, the personal God exists. He is the sum total of the emanations of this universe. And that, when an incarnation comes, that sum total of the universe takes on a body. But that sum total of the universe that takes on a body is still totally aware, experientially aware of that which is beyond the sum totality of the universe. So, we have the personal God which man needs. Because when you go into the realms of the impersonal God, you are in the field of the unconscious being. Then you just are, as I explained this morning. But the personal God that has to take bodily form, he is worthy of our love, devotion, and worship. For when we realize he is totality, then we know the truth when he said, I and my Father are one. That I, that embodied I, is the totality of the universe, and the personal God knows or is merged within the impersonal God. The impersonal God is an energy. It has no will. It can be used. So, the primal manifestation from the impersonal energy through various natural forces constituted the personal God, Christ and the Father. You see? Now, the totality of the universe, that force, in turn grossified itself through various processes of evolution, through the black hole process, for example. For this universe too is endless. It never ends, but it works in cycles, while the impersonal entity, if we could call it an entity, does not work in cycles. It just is there. Now, when a kind of balance comes about in the universe, then it dissolves. Shiva. It dissolves and is drawn back within itself. The entire universe is drawn back within itself, in which we term the black hole. But as it goes into the black hole, certain very fine vibrations remain. And because of these fine vibrations within the black hole, it has to explode out again, in from one end and out the other end. And there, again, the process of evolution starts, and another universe comes about. And then right from the primal atom through these various processes, and I've spoken about this before, we reach the stage of thinking man. So, here the questioner says God is love and love is truth. Love must contain wisdom. This is very true. Now, God is love. That is not that all-pervading eternal essence or energy called the impersonal God, for that just remains an energy. But what expresses love is the totality of this universe. So when we say God is love, we are talking of the personal God. If we talk of that Brahman, or that fine energy always existent without having to go through cycles, that knows of no love. That knows of no love. But the personal God is the one that is all love. Now, what do we mean by this love? The personal God has the universal mind, because he is the sum totality of the universe. Fine. And therefore, it is love. And through that universal mind, the love that he is or gives is not conditional, and neither it is by volition. It is its nature. And how does it express its nature? It expresses its nature in the evolution, the development of the cycle. That is why, right from the primal cell, one progresses to the human stage through various kingdoms, and that very process is the love of God. That very process is the love of God, because it is forever taking you back. Forever taking you back home from where you have originated. And that is why we say God is love. He is not a figure sitting up there in heaven, throne, long beard, and say, I love you, my son, I love you, come unto me. No. The process is love. Do you see? And how much we become aware of the process, so much do we become aware of love. And then we in turn express express that love because we are aware of the process. So the entire existence is nothing else but a process. And in the process, we are forever proceeding to greater and greater awareness of what is going on in this motion. But what we do, we understand more of commotion than motion. Motion is peaceful. Motion is peaceful. Commotion is not. But we use motion to create commotion, and that is done by the small mind. And that is why we want to meditate to reach the highest superconscious level of the mind, where even the motion, though being motion, would be so still, like a highly spinning top, spinning so fast that to us it would seem very still. Yes. So, these are things to understand, and then otherwise it would just be a saying. Everybody says that God is love and love is God. Just verbal words, and nothing understood. So the love of God is the process, and the very process is God. Do you see how it ties up within each other? For even there too, in this process, there is a system. No process can come about haphazardly. And because the process cannot come about haphazardly, we call it God's will. You see? That is the will. Now we are involved in this process, which is God's will. Therefore we say that we are governed by God's will, which is very true. Which is very true. We're involved in this process. We are involved in His love. Now, when there is love, it has to have its opposites. Hate. Where does hate come from? There in reality is no hate. There is no hate at all. It is the misinterpretation of love which is termed to be hate. As we all know, the difference between love and hate, it has a very thin dividing line. You can love someone very much now and later, because of misinterpretations by the little mind, it can turn to hate. So, hate is an idea. If God is love and God is the universe, where is there place for hate? There is no hate. Hate is an idea because using only a fraction of the mind, using only the conscious mind, and the conscious mind with its ego self wants everything conducive to itself and says that I am the center of the universe. And when it says the I, it does not mean the real I, but the ego I. And the ego I is forever grasping, is forever trying to preserve itself. Preserve itself in whatever way, by hook or crook. It wants to preserve itself. And when things does not come its way, then he changes the energy of love into hate and projects it onto others. And that's what he thinks. That's what the ego thinks, that I hate someone. The ego self finds an object of the hatred. But where does the hatred really stem from? It stems from the subject. So I am the hate then. The ego self is the hate. And that is why we lose sight of the true meaning of the will of God, and God is love. So what do we do with the ego self, the stumbling block? People say annihilate it. I say don't, keep it. That's good. For without self-identity, which the ego self brings about, how can you have, without knowing self-identity, how are you going to know the universal identity, which is God? So, preserve the ego self, but refine the ego self. It would be foolish for a person to say, I was Jack, I'm not Jack anymore. I am now the universe, and runs around like a madman. Therefore, we have had madmen coming into this world and saying, I am God. You are, really are. But have you realized that yet? Have you realized that universal self? Have you encapsuled that universal God within yourself to say, I am He? No. And that is why people like Hitler are born. To boost the ego self. That which we must refine is made much, much, much more gross. So we become stagnant. We actually go back instead of going forwards. So, God is... That's jokes. I picked up the wrong paper. Yes. You know, these two friends went out pub crawling, as they say in England. And they got quite well inebriated. In other words, drunk. So they were going home. And there's one friend says to the other, look, Jack, come in for a cup of black coffee. It'll make you feel better. So this friend consented, and they went to the front door. So here, John was fumbling around with a key. So Jack asks, can't you find the key? So he says, my friend, I found the key, I've got the key, but I can't find the lock. It was a Yale lock too. Yes, so we, in our sense, believing that we are it all, preserving the ego self, are really intoxicated in that. It's better to have the intoxication within the universal self than the little ego self. It gets you nowhere. Okay. So, through meditation and spiritual practices, one refines the ego self so that the higher self within oneself can shine through. So, meditation and spiritual practices is a cleansing process. It is a preparation, and then illumination will dawn. First, the stage of Sarvikalpa Samadhi, which we spoke about this morning, where you find the I and thou, you find the universal God, and you find your small little I, and you learn to discriminate between the small I and the universal I. And then with furthermore practices, the small I becomes so clarified that the force and light of the higher I, some call it the oversoul, shines through. And yet, while you are embodied, the ego self will exist, but in a clarified, refined form. So that is what is called mergence, not throwing away or discarding or annihilating the ego I. You cannot do that. If you annihilate the ego I, you won't be able to walk, talk, or perform any biological functions. You see. But the permeation comes not from yourself to the higher self, but if the small self is cleansed, and the higher self automatically comes. So you don't merge into God, God merges into you. By giving you, and you know it, you become conscious of it, and life becomes peaceful and more smoother. And when that happens, the step after that, to merge away like the drop of water in the ocean into the Brahman, the impersonal God, just becomes automatic. Now what happens with these incarnations is this, that they could merge away any time they wish to merge away. But they, being the emanation of the entirety of the universe, they do still have desire. And the desire is to come back again and again, age after age, when they are needed, when evil rises, when there's an imbalance, they come again and again to show the path, universal truths which have always existed. They have done nothing new, but put universal truths in a way that the times would be able to understand it. Is wisdom automatically gained when true love is reached? Yes. When true love is reached, in this mergence with the small I to the big I, then that brings about love. And love is something spontaneous. Love is something spontaneous, and it is something that cannot be defined, but experienced. For we can talk about what it is about it, but not about what it really is. So, when this mergence comes about, then you are automatically merged with wisdom. For that process is the wisdom. Or how else can the process carry on? That is wisdom itself. So, when a person truly knows love, then wisdom is automatically there. Now, the next question is, what is the difference between knowledge and wisdom? There's a great difference. Knowledge is mostly acquired. You can read 1,000,000 books and acquire a lot of knowledge as university professors do. But that is something acquired, gained from outside, and which most times burden the mind with useless knowledge too. For when we reach wisdom, we don't need knowledge. Because knowledge always contains the elements of logic, rationalizations, analytical. But when we reach the stage of wisdom, then it just flows from inside. Just flows. You put the mind aside, that which could carry wisdom, for you do not operate from that level. All knowledge is centered in the left hemisphere of the brain. But wisdom pours forth from the right hemisphere of the brain. The right hemisphere of the brain is the part that has that intuitional value to it. It has that part is so connected to the universal mind. So this is another thing meditation does, that it connects up the right hemisphere to the analytical left hemisphere by creating a greater synaptic force. And that is why our thinking from the left hemisphere becomes more and more powerful, more concentrated. That's another thing which meditation and spiritual practices do. So in other words, it brings about this wholeness where the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere can function in its fullest capacity together. And then the left hemisphere, although being rationalistic, only becomes an interpreter. And that is how wisdom flows through you. From deep inside, via the intuitive levels of the right hemisphere, then because of the wonderful conjunction that exists because of spiritual practices, it filters through the left hemisphere, analyzes it, and interprets it to those that hear. See, these are the mechanics. So all worship is good. All worship is good because through worship, when the mind is not one that would want to analyze, then worship is done, devotion is brought about, and through that, without analyzing it, you touch upon the right hemisphere, and through that you go deeper to the intuitive levels of the mind. You see? Let's have a little a young suitor one day asked his girlfriend's little brother, I said, would you like to earn some pocket money? So the young lad says, yes. What must I do? He says, look, I'll give you 50p. If you can bring a lock of hair from your sister. So the youngster says, look, if you give me £2, I'll bring the whole wig. You know, these newlyweds were getting off a station, and when they got off the train, the bride says to her husband, he says, look, in front of all these people, we don't want to appear as newlyweds. You know, let us do something so people will think that they married a long time. So he says, well, okay, that's easy. You carry the suitcases. You know, widow, it was in last week's paper, report that in Derby, a widow with 9 children married a widow with 7 children. And the commentator says that this wasn't a marriage, it was a merger. And one theory was expounded that a man with long hair would look very intellectual. So this friend says that my wife found a long hair on my coat and I looked a perfect ass. The wife was reading the papers and she says, "Oh, all this business about trial marriages, isn't it horrid?" So the husband says, "I don't know." And she says, "Do you believe in trial marriages?" He says, "Well, in a way I do." He says, "Aren't all marriages a trial?" Then there was this businessman. He made a fortune. So a friend asked him, "How did you make a fortune?" Well, he says, "I became a partner of a very rich man. He had the money and I had the experience." He says, "But how did that help you?" He says, "Well, now he has the experience and I have the money." Good, I think that's over an hour now. Good, fine. Time for supper. Very good. So one could really go on and on with this. Write a book on this. I'm going to keep this. Okay.